Greg is an entrepreneur and philanthropist who has successfully founded and led several businesses over the past 20 years. As a John Maxwell internationally certified speaker, coach, and leadership trainer, Greg has worked with several private and nonprofit organizations focused on leadership and people development. So thank you so much, Greg. We're so excited to have you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Let me just get my screen up to share here.
Yeah, you should be co-host. You should be all set.
Yeah, it's allowing me to do it now. Just bear with me a second.
Right. Yeah.
Back to that technology
I know.
disclosure.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me just. Okay, can you see my slideshow but not my notes? Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today to speak to you all on something I'm very passionate about, and that is leadership. My bio, as stated, I make my living as a financial planner. And about 5 years ago, when I was starting a new firm, I wanted to grow myself personally in my leadership capabilities. So I reached out to the Maxwell team, and I'm happy to say that John Maxwell has been a friend and mentor of mine for the last 5 years. But I thought it was important initially that I have these skills just to develop my own team. I never, had hoped to, be asked to speak at lunch and learns and things of this nature. It's just kind of been a byproduct of learning these things through John that I'm able to share with people that want to hear it. So I'm happy to do it. Good afternoon. My name's Greg Sheehan, as properly presented. I'm very excited to spend the next 25 or 30 minutes with you speaking on something that I'm passionate about, leadership. So bear with me. Marianne used the quote from earlier, so I won't repeat it, but basically, John Maxwell has been a friend and a mentor of mine since 2017. He's mentored thousands of individuals and companies for the last 4.5 decades. He believes he has proven in his work that leadership makes a difference. I think we all know that it does. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. A good home life, a good work life, a country, everything rises and falls on leadership. So I'm hoping to just share a few nuggets from this book, Leadership Gold, that we can all take away with us. And my hope is that I don't want you to be like Charlie Brown. If you ever recall the Peanuts, where he admired the sandcastle that he had created in the beach, only to have it leveled by a huge downpour. And as he looked at what once was his sandcastle, he said, there must be a lesson in here somewhere, but I don't know what it is. So welcome everybody, and let's get into the meat and potatoes of all this. So in our brief time together, I want to consider some of the following topics. If you're lonely as a leader, then what is wrong? Okay. Why is it so critical that you lead yourself well? What's the quickest way to evaluate how well you're leading your team? And how do you lead the toughest person in the room? People quit people. They don't quit companies. Actually, I want to take that one step further, and I like this analogy better. Someone once told me, Greg, passengers don't crash planes, pilots do. So if you're piloting the plane, this will be time well spent. So we're only going to scratch the surface here. I mean, I could go deep on a lot of these things, but that's not what I'm here for. Again, just to give you a few nuggets that maybe you could take away with you, but I wanted to give you some tangible takeaways. No one ever gets to the top alone. As a financial planner, I tell people there's no such thing as a rich hermit. Okay, people need people to grow. People need people to lead. So what kind of leader would leave everyone behind and take the journey alone? Selfish one, right? I mean, taking people to the top is what a good leader does, right? You don't alienate. What do you and I need to know about taking people to the top? Well, first, no one ever gets to the top alone, right? If you're at the top of your organization or you're in a leadership position right now, then you did not get there all by yourself. But a tragic mistake that some of us make as leaders is when we get to the top, we tend to play a king of the hill game, right? We get protective and start pushing others down. Or we've been a part of a organization where we see this happening. And, kind of to the point of the king of the hill, what was the goal of that? Get to the top of the hill and keep everybody else from getting to the top. One behavior you may need to evaluate if you're lonely at the top is your positional thinking. Okay. You want to bring people up with you rather than, if you're playing the king of the hill game, rather than connecting with your team and inviting them to join you at the top, you may be creating more distance between you. So if you're lonely as a leader, then what's wrong? Well, it's a great question to ask. If there's been one consistent assumption leaders make, it's that if you're a good leader, then it must be lonely at the top. And that's a myth. So John, in his chapter titled, if it's lonely at the top, you're not doing something right, makes the case that if you feel lonely in your position as a leader, then your leadership is all about your position and not about your people. Okay. John often states that if you're taking a journey and nobody's following you, you're just on a walk. Okay. So if you're all alone and then no one's following you, and if nobody's following you, you're not really leading at all. You're kind of only fooling yourself at that point. So how do you bring others along with you? Well, first, I mentioned it in the last slide, you need to avoid positional thinking. When you use your title to persuade others or your people to create it creates distance between you and them. And a leader does not belittle their people. Okay, I'm not saying anybody on this call does that, but if you're in a leadership position, you've probably seen this or been a victim of this type of behavior. And that kind of speaks to the awareness and the bigness, if you will, of that leader. If you want to win people over, you need to build relationships with them. Okay, that's called permission leadership. When somebody allows you to lead them, they buy into the mission, they buy into the goal, and they'll do what you ask of them because they feel a part of a team and they respect you as a leader. Now, realize the downside of success and failure, right? You can't have success without failure. If you do start to have success, you may be tempted to believe that you don't need your team. But ironically, they're the ones who helped you get where you are. So remember, you're in the people business always. And I know this group that gets together, you're all in the people business, but we're all in the people business if we're leaders. So finally, adopt the law of significance. So in John's book, 17 Indispensable Laws of Teamwork, he writes that one is too small a number to achieve greatness. Right? I challenge you to find one person, and this goes back to my rich hermit comment, that made a significant impact in this world all by themselves. Greatness is always bigger than what you can do yourself. So, how do you lead the toughest person in the room? Now, typically, if this was in person, I would say take a couple minutes with the people at your table and ask yourselves that question. How do you lead the toughest person in the room? Then after a couple minutes, I would say, let me throw a second question at you all. Who's the toughest person in the room to lead? Well, the toughest person to lead is yourself. The person I have the most difficult time leading is myself, right? It's a full-time job, right? I have to motivate myself. I have to discipline myself. I have to protect my integrity. I mean, the list is pretty much endless. Why is it that way, though? John says there's two reasons for this. One, we don't see ourselves as we see others, right? That's totally true. And we're harder on others than we are on ourselves. You know, human nature equips us with the ability to size everybody in the world up in a matter of a few seconds for the most part. And it's remarkable how most people lack awareness, but they don't know how to size themselves up. You know, we have the ability to size up others in the world except for ourselves. And we tend to give ourselves a pass. Just recently, again, you know, I'm not in the business of speaking professionally and teaching leadership, so to speak. It's just been a passion, but I was working with a client, and we did some work, I'd say about a dozen of his employees. And after our work together, he asked for a detailed evaluation on the people that I spoke with. And after I gave him that, he basically pointed out that these 8 people need more help. They lack, as I assess them, so to speak, self-awareness. They lack the basic awareness. And now he wanted me to send him a proposal on how we can increase that group of people's awareness. But, you know, there's a saying, to grow yourself, you have to know yourself. Okay. And you also always have to be teachable. You know, I don't like when people use the term expert, not with me or just in general, because to me that implies there's nothing left to learn in that particular topic. And I just feel like you're either growing or you're going. So, as John says, we tend to judge others according to their actions, and it's pretty cut and dried. However, we judge ourselves by our intentions. And I'm guilty of this, right? Even when I blow it, I kind of let myself off the hook because my intentions were good. So how do you lead yourself well if you're always letting yourself off the hook? Well, it's a great question. Allow me to give you a few takeaways here. One, you need to develop self-discipline. It said that one day, and I'm going to read this so I get it accurate here. It said that one day Frederick the Great of Prussia was walking on the outskirts of Berlin when he encountered a very old man walking ramrod straight in the opposite direction. "Who are you?" Frederick asked his subject. "I'm a king," replied the old man. "A king," laughed Frederick. "Over what kingdom do you reign?" "Over myself," was the proud old man's reply. So discipline is just simply giving ourselves a command and following it through. Self-discipline is the highest form of leadership, right? You're the captain of your ship, the master of your own soul. Leading yourself is a challenge. And one of the places where your character shows up is how you lead yourself. You know, I always refer to the doctors that tell patients they need to lose 10 or 15 pounds, but they're 40 pounds overweight. You know, it's kind of practice what you preach, if you will. But honestly, friends, there are days when I just would like a break from being, you know, self-disciplined. But the problem is it's really not a good idea to ever take a day off from that type of thing. And I'm not talking about enjoying a good meal or some, you know, libations with friends. But this leads me to the second action that you can take to lead yourself well. Seek accountability. I'm in a couple of groups of business owners where we hold each other accountable. And I'm gathering that these type of networking opportunities, you may have some peer groups that, you know, you can share ideas and some of your weaknesses. My group is made up of people from all over the country, and we do the same business. So there's no really holding any cards back. You know, there's no threat to our businesses from other people in this group. It's, you know, it's purely about sharing. But as I was developing as a leader in a previous organization, I remember there would be letters that would get sent out to some staff saying that, you know, so-and-so was no longer a part of the team. And they basically explained it as their inability to lead themselves, which was having an effect on them being able to lead the rest of the department. So accountability, self-discipline, and learn followership. One of the things in my peer group, I think this is a funny aside, is we set our sessions up, and having these sessions has actually kept me from making some poor decisions in the past, because I've sat with them and I say, I'm going to take it to my peer group. I'll get different perspectives. And at each session we had together, we had a list of agreed upon questions, which gave others permission to ask. But because we knew ourselves so well, the final question was, did you lie about any of the previous questions? So, having that accountability or that peer group, or I hear the term now, mastermind. We have a mastermind. A true mastermind is a fantastic situation to be in, where two or more minds are collaborating and getting in synchronization and free flowing of ideas. I think the definition of mastermind has been skewed over the years from what it was originally developed as, but that's a whole separate topic. Thomas Watson said it so aptly: nothing so conclusively proves a man's ability to lead others as his ability to lead himself from day to day. Okay. So in the chapter, Defining Moments, Define Your Leadership, John points out that oftentimes it's the choices we made in times of crisis or challenge that really define and shape our leadership. We can look on a global level, to our elected officials and pivotal points in time in the history where decisions need to be made, and it really defined a presidency or defined their leadership. But if you want to gain influence with people, solve problems, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership. And what is leadership? Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. Your influence. And how do you develop influence? You bring value to people's lives. How do you bring value to people's lives? You solve problems. You guys just ran through, your facility there, and that, you're solving a problem. You're creating influence with potential residents or family members that are looking for a place for their loved ones. So if you want to gain influence with people, solve problems. How you act or fail to act in those moments reveal to others just what our leadership competencies are. Okay, I think we've all, if you've worked long enough and you've had enough bosses or leaders or managers, we've all come to a point where we've seen some critical decision making, good or bad. Times like facing personal failure, taking a stand on an issue, experiencing suffering, or making an unpleasant choice. All these and more, when stick handled rightly, will either catapult us forward or eliminate our effectiveness as a leader. Oh boy, we're going into a side meditation class here, folks. I'm kidding. No one loves to be criticized, right? If you do, then you may need some professional help that goes well beyond what we're talking about today. But how do you know you're a leader? Because you're getting kicked in the rear. That's how you know, right? Every leader has a target on his or her back. So how do you handle criticism, and how you handle it? I love the story, and I'm going to read this so I don't get it botched here. But how do you handle criticism? I love the story of the salesman who's getting a haircut and mentioned that he was about to take a trip to Rome. And Rome's a terrible, overrated city, commented his barber, who was born in northern Italy. What airline are you taking? The salesman told him the name of the airline, and the barber responded, what a terrible airline. Their seats are cramped, their service is terrible, the food's bad, and their planes are always late. What hotel are you staying at? And the salesman named the hotel, and the barber explained, why would you stay there? The hotel's in the wrong part of town and has horrible service. You're better off staying at home. And the salesman said, but I expect to close a big deal while I'm there. And afterward, I hope to see the Pope. You'll be disappointed trying to do business in Italy, said the barber. And don't count on seeing the Pope. He only grants audiences to very important people. 3 weeks later, the salesman comes back into the barber shop, and the barber says, and how was your trip? The salesman says, it was wonderful. The flight was perfect. The service at the hotel was excellent, and I made a big sale. And, pausing for a fact, the salesman said, I got to meet the Pope. You got to meet the Pope. Finally, the barber was impressed. Tell me what happened. How did you get to meet him? Well, when I approached him, I bent down and kissed his ring. No kidding, said the barber. And what did he say? He looked down at my head and said, my son, where'd you get such a lousy haircut? So how you handle criticism. Criticism is something you can avoid easily, as Aristotle says, by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. I don't think if you're on this call, you're nothing. So people can change for the better only when they're open to improvement. And that goes back to being coachable, right? Are you teachable? Just because you may be at the top of your leadership pyramid where you are, you still have to be teachable. So grow or go. So how you handle criticism is so vital to your growth as a leader that when you're criticized, John says, try to maintain the right attitude by doing these things, not being defensive. Easier said than done, right? I mean, back to the criticism here, looking for the grain of truth in what's being said, making any necessary changes, and taking the high road. As much as we sometimes may want to get into a back and forth, better to just take the high road, sit with what's being said, and then kind of, they say when angry, count to 10, when very angry, count to 100. But when you sit in the leader's seat, criticism finds your desk, right? I'm not looking at the panel. I'm just assuming there's a lot of heads nodding like, oh yeah. Whether that criticism is legitimate or not, you need to maintain a positive attitude. That there is where you can find some gold in that pile of dirt. Maintaining a positive attitude when receiving criticism. So here are questions I ask to determine what kind of criticism this is. One, who criticized me, right? Adverse criticism from a wise person is more to be desired than the enthusiastic approval of a fool. So the source of the criticism often matters. How was it given? How was this criticism given? I try to discern whether the person was being judgmental or whether he gave or she gave me the benefit of the doubt and spoke with kindness. Third, why was it given? Was it given out of personal hurt or for my benefit? There's a saying, hurt people, right? And that speaks to being aware. So, did they lash out or criticize to try and make themselves feel better or to help the other person? In this case, you or me. Now, whether criticism is legitimate or not, what determines whether I grow or groan under the criticism, is my attitude, right? We've all heard this, love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So in the chapter, Never Work a Day in Your Life, John describes the importance of having passion for what you do. Following your passion is key to finding your potential. I think a lot of people feel as though they've found their purpose, and this has been a buzzword now for probably 5 or 6, 10 years. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? What's your why? So how do you find your passion? This is a great question. It can be found by answering this simple question. What do you love doing so much that you would do it for free? What do you love doing so much that you would do it for free? And I love this quote here. L.P. Jacks stated, "A master in the art of living draws no sharp distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing and leaves others to determine whether he's working or playing. To himself, he always appears to be doing both." And I thought, I kind of read that at least 3 times a week. That's kind of how I would like to see myself. Am I working? Am I playing? If you can't tell, well, maybe I'm doing both. So the world will belong to the passionate, driven leaders, people who not only have enormous amounts of energy, but who can energize those whom they lead. Jack Welch, one of an all-time great CEOs of GE, Leadership is influence. I mentioned this earlier. Nothing more, nothing less. People gravitate to passion. Are you passionate about the work that you have? I sense that you all are. All right. So, get real. Looks like I'm having a little bit of a glitch here. Bear with me for a second. All right. So one of the pitfalls that can stop potential leaders is the desire to focus on vision to the detriment of facing reality. And that reminds me of I'm a quote guy. I can't remember who these quotes are from. They just fill up space in my head, but it said, it was once rumored that executives would walk around their offices backwards, so they never really had to face a problem. And I thought that was pretty funny, because we've all probably been in a position where we had leaders or leadership where that seemed to be the case. John states that it's a leader's job to define reality. One of the pitfalls that can stop you as a potential leader is the desire to focus, on the vision to the detriment of facing reality. So how do you find what is real? A reality check requires you to follow 4 practices. These aren't always easy, but you can grow tremendously from these. Admit your weaknesses. By the way, your team already knows them. So does mine. I'm sure if I went out there and said, give me 3 weaknesses, they could all give me 3, and it might actually not be the same. Admitting that weakness lets them know that you know. Embrace realistic people, right? Birds of a feather do flock together. Have team members who complement your weaknesses. When we're looking for somebody in our firm, I often say, we need somebody that complements our weaknesses. What does that person look like? What does that position look like? Ask for honesty from others. Not people that are going to tell you what you want to hear. When you experience success, it becomes increasingly difficult to have people around you that will tell you what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear. That will keep you real. A peer group could do that. But if you can surround yourself, back to that mastermind, with people that are kind of in synchronization with how you're thinking and your vision, these are people that could be brutally honest with you as well. Invite fresh eyes to check you out. John admitted he needed to bring outside consultants or experts in to take a new look at what he saw every day. Perhaps you need to do the same. As Jim Collins points out in Good to Great, good leaders who lead great companies face reality and make changes accordingly. Right? I used to, and I still say this, I was involved in town politics. I know. I roll my eyes every time I admit that, about 15 years ago. And one of the things that I share with new members to that board is, hey, look, here's something that you can always keep in your back pocket. You can always make a new decision based on new information. So, you're never backed into a corner at that point. If something develops, you were adamant, I'm in favor of this, and now you've changed your mind, it's okay to make a change based on new information. And I think that's kind of what Jim Collins is referring to here. You absolutely cannot make a series of good decisions without first confronting the brutal facts. So how are you doing? Are we learning anything here? Is this just a repeat of some of the courses you may have taken? Well, if it is, let it just re-solidify some of those points that you already may be aware of. Here's the key: never stop learning. Make personal growth a priority. And that's really what I was doing when I started down this road. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to use the coaching and the leadership to develop my own team. So leaders are readers. It's not an original. I've taken that. I've heard that over the years. Leaders learn continually. Do you have a personal growth plan? Right? If you're building a house from scratch, you have a blueprint. If you're saving for retirement, most people will have some sort of financial plan, but do you have a personal growth plan? Now, let me applaud you in taking the time to be here today. and sitting through my presentation. However, true leadership development happens over a period of time. It's a process. What are you doing every day to develop as a leader? Events like even today can make you aware of what you need to do to develop as a leader, but it can only start the learning. You know, I'm not going to be able to pipe in every day and give you a 20-minute pep talk or talk about a different concept in leadership. So all this can do is restart the learning of your own personal development. During the week between Christmas and New Year's, I spend a concentrated period of time. This is just something that I do, I think is very helpful. Doesn't have to be at the end of the year. You could make it anytime you want. I just happen to do it at the end of the year, where I spend a concentrated period of time. It tends to be slow in my business that time of year, evaluating my calendar over the last year. And one of the measurements that I use was how much did I spend investing in my personal growth? Experts tell us we should be spending 10% of our income investing in personal growth, probably personal growth experts, right? Kind of like the Hallmark industry. There's a card for every day now. But here's a valid question. Do you know how much you've invested in yourself? Do you have a plan so that you keep learning and growing? During that week, which happens to be the last week of the year for me, I do an evaluation of my calendar. I conclude with my one word for the year upcoming. And this year, my word was intentional. So 2022, it's intentional. Having one word, and there's a number of different things that I do that, you know, some may look funny at me when I say as part of my personal growth plan. But that one word, having one word keeps me focused on what direction I want my personal life and my business life to go in. John says in his book, to grow, you have to be intentional. So how do you keep learning and growing? Well, you have to invest in yourself first. There's a direct link between how your company grows and how you grow. And there's plenty of data on this now. If you want to lead, you must learn. If you want to continue to lead, you must continue to learn. Create a growth environment for the people you lead. Now, what does a growth environment look like? Well, John believes it has 10 characteristics. It's a place where the following things occur. Others are ahead of you. You are continually challenged. Your focus is forward. The atmosphere is affirming. Toxic work environments don't work here. You're often out of your comfort zone. We make it a point in our firm. I try to keep people in their comfort zone as much as I can because that's where they do their best work. But in order to grow, we make time to keep people out of their comfort zone. So they get a little bit of everything. I try to keep it heavy on the comfort zone, but it's important even for myself to step outside that comfort zone. You wake up excited. Failure is not your enemy. Others around you are growing. People desire change. Growth is modeled and expected. So if you can create a growth environment, not only will the people in your organization grow and improve, but people with great potential will knock down your doors to become part of your team, right? I've heard this about different firms. I've heard it about, different organizations that you folks are all a part of. Dynamic leader over there, and, people want, they're doing great things in the community and people are attracted to that. So, people quit people, not companies, right? Pilots crash planes, not passengers. Oscar Wilde said, some cause happiness wherever they go. Some cause happiness whenever they go. I think we've all dealt with people like this. Some sources estimate that as many as 65% of people leaving companies do so because of their managers. Right? We may say that people quit their job or their company, but the reality is they usually quit their leaders. The company doesn't do anything negative to them. People do. Sometimes coworkers cause the problem that prompt people to leave. Got to be aware of what's going on your team. But often the people who alienate employees are their direct supervisors. What types of people do employees quit on? Excuse me. People quit on people who devalue them. These bosses manipulate and start treating them like objects. That is never appropriate for any leader at any level. What should you do? Appreciate your team, find out where they add value and place them there to maximize their efforts, right? It's good to be out of your comfort zone. That promotes growth. Putting them in their strength zone maximizes their efforts and gives them better satisfaction with their position. People quit people who are untrustworthy. Michael Winston, Managing Director and Chief Leadership Officer for Countrywide Financial Corporation, says this: effective leaders ensure that people feel strong and capable. In every major survey on practices of effective leaders, trust in the leader is essential if other people are going to follow that person over time. People must experience the leader as believable, credible, and trustworthy. One of the ways trust is developed, whether in the leader or any other person, is through consistency in behavior. Trust is also established when words and deeds are congruent. So let me ask you this. What are the quickest ways leaders lose the trust of their people? Acting inconsistently in what they say and do. They're not modeling the behavior that they're preaching. Seeking personal gain above shared gain. Withholding information. Lying or telling half-truths. Being closed-minded. Lastly, people quit leaders who are incompetent and those who are insecure. If you've worked long enough, we've all had a leader like that. So let's wrap things up today. I got another couple slides here. Looks like I'm using all my time for sure. Time's short, so we'll just touch on these proven action steps. So how to be a leader worth following rather than losing your key people. Take responsibility for relationships. Don't make it a box you check. You know, good morning, how you doing? I mean, they have a sincere interest in what's going on, because let's face it, you get the whole person. Okay, if you're leading a group of people, you get the whole person. You know, not just what they're doing at work. If you have a sincere interest in your people, you probably know quite a few personal things about them. You know, just be sincere about that. As a leader, you can take lead in making sure relationships are positive. Conduct exit interviews. Find out if you're the reason they're leaving. I would say some people maybe don't want to know that information. I personally would. You know, when people leave me, is it something I did? Or did you grow in such a way here that you now feel confident in taking a bigger, bolder step towards your purpose? That's a compliment to me, if that's the case. You know, I've enjoyed working here. I've learned a lot. Who you learn from is just as important as what you learn. So value those people who work for you. It's wonderful when the people believe in their leader. Great things start to happen. It's more wonderful when the leader believes in the people. So prioritize credibility. Okay, as a leader, there'll be times when you're just over your head. It happens. I constantly feel that way. During these times, be trustworthy. Okay, maintain positive emotional health. Follow the golden rule and have a positive attitude with your team. It will be contagious. It will be contagious. It's not going to be overnight, but if you model that day in and day out, it will catch on. That is the thing you want your people to catch, right? Lastly, maintain a teachable spirit. Started the presentation talking about being teachable, even if you're at the pinnacle of your leadership in your organization. What this means is you understand that everyone in every situation can teach you something. I try to take that everywhere I go. There's something, back to the Charlie Brown, there's a lesson here. What is it? There's a teachable moment rather than just getting negative about a situation. What can be learned from this? Having this posture with your team will endear them to also want to be teachable. And remember, people do what people see. Choose today the legacy you want to leave others. People will summarize your life in one sentence. Pick it now. Be the author of that sentence. What is it that you want to leave behind when you pass from this earth? Claire Booth Luce cleverly called this your life sentence. Now, we're used to hearing life sentence in another way. You did something wrong, you're getting a life sentence. This is a positive twist. What is your life sentence? If you are intentional about creating your legacy, people at your funeral won't have to wonder what your life sentence was. Eleanor Roosevelt remarked, life is like a parachute. Jump. You've got to get it right the first time. Author and leadership expert John Cody said, most people don't lead their lives, they just accept them. I hope that's not the case with people on this call. Everybody has something of value to add to this world. Don't allow that statement to apply to you. Begin choosing the legacy you want to leave others. It may just be the beginning of the process, but that's okay. You must start in order to finish. Well, I thank everybody. I don't know if there were questions around this or comments. I have plenty of time. If anyone wants to chime in, I'm happy to take a crack at answering any questions.
Great, Greg, that was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for presenting. What was the name again of John Maxwell's book? Was it actually called Leadership Gold?
Yes, it's called Leadership Gold. And if you've never heard of John Maxwell, he's written about 80 books on leadership and ethics. It's one of my go-to favorite authors around this. I mean, I have others, but yeah, look him up. I think you'll be surprised at some of the topics and situations that he dives deep and specific into around leadership.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds, I've never read that book, so that is something that I'll actually have to pick up, because a lot of the points that you said were really spot on. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself. If you're on mute, you could actually just press the space bar also if you wanted to ask a question. Oh, Kathy, it looks like she wants to unmute. No, you're just looking.
Oh, God.
You must have covered everything.
I guess, right? I'll take it as a compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I will give a compliment. This is Kimberly O'Connor with Overlook, and I apologize that I'm not on video as I am driving, but just so many golden nuggets that I have taken away from your presentation. So I do want to thank you, and I will be researching and reading that book. So thank you for your time today. And thank you for coordinating this, Marianne.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was looking forward to it as well. Anybody else, any questions? Oh, Julie?
I don't have a question, just I thought I ditto, what Kimberly said, great presentation, a lot of little nuggets there. I like that word. And what you were talking about getting on your comfort zone, out of your comfort zone. One of my favorite quotes is, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So when you were talking it, so another quote for you, Greg, go ahead, use it.
I will.
I love that quote, and we got to keep reminding ourselves of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another quote that you might want to use, and I don't know if it's Tony Robbins or our personal trainer, is challenge creates change. And really, in order to create change, you have to challenge yourself. And that's what we do every day with our personal trainer. But I think it may have come from Tony Robbins. So yeah, I mean, there's no way to just stay the same. If you stay the same, you're going to stay the same.
Yeah.
So you need to move out of that comfort zone for sure, and challenge yourself and keep growing. If you're not growing, I think you said, if you're not growing, you're going. And I usually say, if you're not growing, you're dying. So I think yours is a little bit nicer.
Yeah. Kid gloves on mine.
Right. No, that was excellent for sure. Very nice. It was great. Any more questions? I mean, the presentation itself, Greg, was awesome.
Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure if anybody has any questions, we're answering them. Other than that, I'm going to go right to the raffle and then talk about who our presenter will be for next next month. All right, so let me actually, I'm gonna share.
Mary Ann, I'm just going to jump off now, if that's okay.
You're gonna jump off. Absolutely, Greg. I really appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you.
And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
I'm sure. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.